Hey everyone, welcome back to Gotta Be Geek. It's been a little while, so today I want to jump right into a spicy one. 8 reasons I think server-side rendering is losing relevance in modern apps. Now, before anyone says SSR is dead, that's not my point. SSR still has a place. My argument is this. For authenticated apps, SSR is no longer the natural default. And the reason is authentication. For years, SSR made perfect sense. The server rendered HTML, handled sessions, set cookies, and acted as the gatekeeper for protected data. But modern apps are different. Almost every app wants to know who the user is. There's personalization, subscriptions, collaboration, saved state, analytics. All of it assumes identity. So the question is no longer, can SSR render pages? Of course it can. The real question is, does SSR still fit how modern authentication works? And I think the answer is less and less every year. So let's walk through these 8 reasons and see why SSR is losing relevance in modern apps. Reason number 1. Tokens are increasingly tied to the browser. Identity providers are moving toward token binding, proof of possession patterns, and depop style enforcement. In plain English, the token is issued to the client context that asked for it. That means the old pattern where the server grabs the token in the browser becomes less reliable and less aligned with policy. The shift exists for good security reasons. If an attacker steals a token, providers want to make it much harder to replay that token elsewhere. So if your architecture depends on the server minting and forwarding tokens, you are now designing against the direction of the protocol. Modern Auth is saying the browser owns the token lifecycle, not the server. Reason number 2 is that modern tokens are too big for cookie-first patterns. We used to have tiny session identifiers, now we have large JWTs loaded with claims, roles, groups, signatures, and metadata. A single access token can be a few thousand characters. Add an ID token and refresh tokens, and cookie limits become a real constraint very quickly. So what do teams do? They move to token storage to browser native options, memory session storage, local storage patterns, or SDK managed browser caches. And once that happens, the center of gravity for Auth is in the client anyway. So forcing SSR to act like the primary Auth owner starts to feel artificial. Reason number 3, the industry is actively killing long-lived secrets. That is not just one vendor. Microsoft, Google, AWS, everyone is pushing towards short-lived credentials like workload identity, managed identity, and runtime trust. Why? Because static secrets leak. They expire unexpectedly, they create outage risk and operational drag. If your server-side auth flow still depends on stored client secrets or certificates everywhere, you are sitting on technical debt. Secretless and short-lived identity is the future, and browser-based public client auth with PKCE already fits that model. Reason number 4 is that dev and prod parity breaks down with server-side auth. In production, you might use a managed identity, federation, or enterprise certificates. Locally, well, usually you don't have that same setup, so dev falls back to completely different mechanics like environment secrets, cache CLI credentials, dev-only bypasses. Now you have 2 auth systems, one for local and one for production. That means onboarding is harder, debugging is harder, and auth bugs show up later in the lifecycle. Compare that to browser auth with auth code plus PKCE, same style of flow locally and in production, with far less architectural drift. Reason number 5 is that browser privacy changes broke old auth flow assumptions. Browsers are aggressively reducing cross-site tracking, third-party cookies are restricted, same-site defaults are stricter, and silent iframe renewal is increasingly unreliable. It's important to note, though, that first-party cookies are not dead, and your own app cookies on your own domains still work, so no worries there. What is breaking is cross-domain session magic, and that cross-domain behavior was exactly what many legacy auth flows relied on, especially implicit flow and hidden iframe refresh patterns. What replaced it is straightforward, authorization code flow with PKCE, which is a browser as a public client. No client secret, no brittle iframe dependency. Reason number 6 is that SSR is session first, but modern APIs are token first. APIs like Microsoft Graph do not care about your server session. They care about bearer tokens and authorization headers. So in SSR, you end up doing gymnastics. Server gets a token during render, calls an API, then you still need a strategy for client-side API calls after hydration. Do you serialize the tokens into markup? Well, that's risky. Do you make the user re-auth? That's bad UX. Or do you proxy every API through the server? Now the API layer loses a lot of its purpose. So that's why many SSR apps grow awkward token forwarding layers. It is usually not a feature, it is a compatibility workaround. Reason number 7 is that hybrid SSR plus client auth creates an architectural jank. If you have used a modern framework, you have probably seen this. You start SSR first, then auth gets complicated, so you disable SSR on some routes, you keep it on others, and then you hydrate and patch auth state after first render. Now you get auth flickers, hydration and mismatch warnings, and a constant mental tax. Is this component running server-side right now or client-side? When your app has to figure out who the user is after the page is already rendered, that's a signal SSR is not really driving your experience anymore. Reason number 8 is that the ecosystem itself is browser first now. Look, at Identity SDKs from Microsoft, Auth, and Okta, they all provide first-class browser SDKs, not as side tools, but as primary patterns. MSL.js, Auth SPA SDK, Okta's Auth.js, these are built around PKCE, token acquisition in the browser, silent token renewal patterns that match modern browser rules, and direct API calls from the client. So if you choose SSR as the auth center for a highly interactive app, you're often fighting the mainline tooling ecosystem. And that brings us to the conclusion. SSR did not die. Its sweet spot got narrower. If your site is anonymous, content first, and SEO driven, SSR is still great. You do blogs, docs, marketing pages. But if your app is identity aware, API heavy, and highly interactive, starting SPA first is usually the cleaner, more future aligned choice. So my rule of thumb is simple. If your app needs to know who the user is, start with a SPA. If it does not, SSR is still a solid option. And the thing to avoid is the messy middle, where SSR and client auth are tangled together everywhere. That is where complexity multiplies and velocity drops. If you enjoyed this one, drop your take in the comments. Is SSR still your default for authenticated apps, or have you moved to SPA first? Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.